The flip and fold technique is a technique which we use to put a patchwork of fabrics together. So different shapes of fabrics to create one end block. We're stitching our batting onto our stabilizer, and then we'll be trimming our batting back 1 to 2 millimeters away from the stitching line which we've just created. This batting will sit inside the perimeter stitching lines of our finished block. Let's stitch the placement line for our first piece of fabric, which will be sitting flat onto the batting, ensuring we have got at least ½ inch past our line, which is our straight line, inside our block, and we've got enough fabric sitting on the outside edges to allow for seam allowances for joining the block to another. Stitching down, then we'll trim back our straight edge 2 to 3 millimeters away from the stitching, and there's our placement line there for our next piece of fabric, which we will be doing the flip and fold technique. So it's right sides together, straight edge along straight edge, 1/4 inch past the stitching line. So it's 1/4 inch past the stitching line, which is the interior line. We will stitch that into place, ensuring that we've got enough seam allowance at either end should we require it to be sitting once it has been flipped. So fold it across, finger press along the crease, and hold tautly in position while we're stitching it down. We'll now trim those outside edge seams 2 to 3 millimeters away from the stitching, focusing on where we will need fabric for our seam allowances. So it's high enough to allow for a seam allowance, and it's 1/4 inch past our trimmed edge, and we'll stitch that into place. Stitch, flip, fold, finger press, and hold taut. So we need a seam allowance at the top of that piece of fabric, none at the bottom, and none up that side, but the top is important that we have seam allowance there. So our placement line for our next piece. So the straight edge of that fabric is sitting 1/4 inch past our trimmed seam. We have enough fabric on our right hand side for the seam allowance, and finger press, pull down taut. Pulling down taut stops there being any little pleats or tucks at the beginning and the end of this final stitching. Flip and fold pieces like this, you need to concentrate on where you need your seam allowances. It's very easy to trim a seam allowance off, so you must focus on that. Our corner piece here. Odd shapes sometimes require a template so as you can work out where or how your fabric is to be cut. In the notes for doing flip and fold, often we say make a quick template, so as you know you've got all your seam edge areas covered. So this one has been put on. It's quite a big piece of fabric. There will be some wastage, but we require it. Push that up so there's no pleat at the end. And our final piece at that top corner, 1/4 past the seam, stitch in position, flip, press, and then stitch. And the final piece, placement line, fold it over, finger press it, using your side or the back of your nails, great. Make it taut, And there we have it. There's our pieces joined together. Now we're going to remove the project from the hoop after our quilting has been done and trim back our seam allowances all around. Sometimes it can be easier to work from the back when trimming our seam allowances because we're going to be finding our perimeter stitching lines are more visible on the back than the front. But in this case we're going to just trim the front. Some trims will be partial because we'll be trying to work into a corner, like so. There we have it.